Hello everyone, welcome to Educare 247. This is the first lecture of Indian Polity and this topic is mentioned in UPSC EPFO 2020 syllabus. Educare 247 has started lecture on all the topics mentioned in the syllabus. So you can subscribe to Educare 247 channel for further updates. In the first lecture of Polity, we are discussing historical background of Indian Constitution. And this topic is important from the point of view of polity and history both. So this is very important topic. You can learn many important concepts from this topic. Educare 247 has started comprehensive course for UPSC EPFO 2020. Under this course, you will get video lectures, notes, MCQs and 12 test series. So this is very important course. You can cover all your topics with the help of this course. The course fees is 2,999. So what are you waiting for? Visit educare247.com and subscribe to this course. This course will help in the preparation for UPSC EPFO 2020 upcoming exam. First we'll understand the syllabus of Indian Polity for UPSC EPFO 2020. Last year, it means in 2017, total 9 questions were asked from the Indian Polity. So it is very important section. What all we have to study under the Indian Polity is Indian Constitution, history of the Constitution we have to study, making of the Constitution, salient features of the Constitution, and then we'll see the preamble in the Constitution. After that, we'll see the fundamental rights and fundamental duties, directive principle of state policy. Then we'll see the Parliament. Under the Parliament, we'll see the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Then President and its power. President is the part of Parliament, so we'll discuss this. Then we'll see the Prime Minister and its cabinet. After that, we'll see the Governor and Chief Minister. Now we are moved to states. Then we'll see the Supreme Court and High Court. Then we'll see the Vidhan Sabha and Vidhan Parishad. Last, we'll see the constitutional bodies. Under this, we'll see Election Commission, Finance Commission and different constitutional bodies. At the end we'll see Panchayati Raj. Under this, Municipal Corporation of India will be also discussed and 73rd constitutional amendment will be discussed. So these are the important topics under polity we'll be discussing in this course. This is very important topic. First we'll understand the historical background of Indian Constitution. Why historical background is important? Because Constitution has not evolved in one day. It has evolved gradually from company rule to British rule and to independent India. In 1765, the East India Company obtained the Diwani rights of Bengal, Bihar and Odisha. What was Diwani rights? Right over revenue and civil justice. So question can be asked, in which year the East India Company obtained the Diwani right? And the second question can be asked, for which of the following states East India Company obtained the Diwani rights in 1765? The answer would be Bengal, Bihar and Odisha. In 1958, after the 1857 revolution, the British Crown assumed direct responsibility for governance of India. So, various features of Indian Constitution and polity has been derived from the British rule and the company rule. That's why we need to understand the historical background of the Constitution. The first rule we need to know is the Regulating Act of 1773. This is very important act because this was the first step taken by British government to control and regulate the affairs of East India Company in India. Let's discuss the feature of this act. This act make the Governor of Bengal as a Governor General of Bengal and it has an executive council with 4 members. Lord Warren Hastings was the first Governor General of Bengal. Governor of Bombay and Madras was the subordinate to the Governor General of Bengal. This act established the Supreme Court at Kolkata in 1774. This prohibited the servants of the company from engaging in any private trade because there were lots of corruption by the different servant of the company. That's why it prohibited the servant of the company to involve in any private trade. It strengthened the control of British government over the company by requiring the court of directors. So court of directors were introduced with the help of this act. These are very important points. You have to remember all the important points. Now let's discuss the Pitt's India Act 1784. This act is also very important because British possession in India was first time mentioned in this act. So British possession in India was mentioned in which act? Pitt's India Act 1784, and it gives the supreme control over the company affairs. It distinguishes between the commercial and political function of the company. It allowed a court of directors to manage the commercial affairs and created a new body called Board of Control to manage the political affairs. It was a system of double government, so this is very important. It empowered the Board of Control to supervise and direct all operations of the civil and military government or revenue of the British possession in India. So basically it divided the power of company in commercial and political function, and for political function it created the Board of Control. This is very important point. Now let us discuss the Charter Act of 1833. It was the final step for the centralization in British India. Let's discuss the feature of this act. It made the Governor General of Bengal as the Governor General of India, and Lord William Bentinck was the first Governor General of India. This fact can be asked in the examination. All civil and military powers were vested in Governor General of India. It deprived the Governor of Bombay and Madras for their legislative power. Now only Governor General of India can make the law. All the exclusive legislative power was with the Governor General of India. Laws were made under the previous act were called the regulation, and new law will be called as a act. So the later law became the regulation. This is very important. It ended the activities of East India Company as a commercial body. Now East India Company become purely a administrative body. Charter Act of 1833 attempted to introduce the system of open competition for the selection of civil servants, but that time it was failed because the court of directors were opposed to this system. They said old system is good, so it didn't got implemented. Let us discuss the Charter Act of 1853. This was the last act under the company rule. After that, British Crown took over the governance in India. Let us understand the feature of this act. This act separated the legislative and executive function of Governor General of India. Basically, Governor General of Council got 6 additional members, and they were called Legislative Councillor of the Council. It acted as a mini parliament, and it followed the same procedure as British Parliament. So now legislation was the special function for the government in India. It introduced an open competition system, and then Macaulay Committee was formed. When it was formed, it was appointed in 1854, and this committee was called the Committee on the Civil Services. This is very important. It extended the company rule and allowed it to retain the possession of Indian territories on the trust of British Crown. It introduced for the first time local representation in Indian Legislative Council. So this is very important point. You can remember all the features. Any features can be asked in the examination. Now we'll discuss the Crown Rule. It started in 1858 after the 1857 revolution, and it ended in 1947. So Government of India Act of 1858 we have just discussed. It started after the revolt of 1857. A revolt of 1857 is also called as First War of Independence. So you can remember this point. This act is known as Good Government of India, and it abolished the East India Company and transferred the power of government, territories and revenue to British Crown. So from East India Company to the British Crown, the power has transferred, the revenue also got transferred, everything was with British Crown. Let us understand the features of the Government of India Act 1858. It changed the title of Governor General of India to the Viceroy of India. Now Viceroy directly represent the British Crown in India, and Lord Canning was first Viceroy of India. This is very important point. It can be asked in the examination. It ended the system of double government, of board of control and court of directors. Now it created a new office called Secretary of States for India, and it has all the authority and control over the Indian administration. It was the member of British cabinet and it was responsible to British Parliament. So this is very important point. It established a 15-member Council of India, and Secretary of State for India was the chairman of this council. So this is very important. It improved the administrative machinery and it included the Indian people in the governance. So this is very important fact. After the revolt of 1857, the British government realized that seeking the cooperation of Indians are very important in the administration. For that, they have introduced Indian Councils Act of 1861, 1892 and 1909. So these acts are also very important. We will discuss these acts in the details. Let us discuss the features of the Act 1909. This act is also known as Morley-Minto Reform. Why it is called Morley-Minto Reform? Because Lord Morley was the Secretary of State for India and Lord Minto was the Viceroy at that time. This act increased the size of legislative councils and the power of executive council. The central legislative council was raised from 16 to 60, but provincial council's size was not fixed. That's why we are not mentioning the number. It provided power for non-official majority to provincial legislative council, but retain the official majority in the central legislative council. This was very important. The function of council was also enlarged, like members were allowed to ask supplementary questions, members were allowed to move the resolution on the budget. It provided the association of Indians with the executive council of the Viceroy. Satyendra Prasad Sinha became the first Indian to join the Viceroy Executive Council and he was appointed as the law member. So this point is very important. You can remember this point. Question can be asked from this point. This act also introduced the communal representation for Muslim. So it legalized the communalization. Lord Minto came to known as the father of communal electorate because of this communal representation of Muslim. It also provided the separate representation of presidency, corporation, chambers of commerce, universities and zamindars. This is very important point. You can remember this point. They were got the separate representation. Let us discuss the Government of India Act of 1990. On August 20, 1917, British government declared for the first time it will gradually introduce the responsible government in India. For that, it passed the Government of India Act 1990 and it came to force in 1921. It is known as Montagu-Chelmsford Reform because Montagu was the Secretary of State for India and Lord Chelmsford was the Viceroy of India. Let's discuss the feature of this act. It relaxed the central control over the provinces by demarking and separating the central and the provincial subjects. For provincial subjects, the two parts were introduced, transferred and reserved. The transfer subject was the subject which was for governor with the aid of minister responsible to the legislative council, but the reserved subject was for governor with his executive council. So in reserved subject there was no say for the legislative council, only executive council was responsible. It is called as dual scheme of governance and diarchy. This is very important. Diarchy is a Greek word that means double rule. This was very important point. In examination it can be asked when diarchy was introduced, with the help of which Government of India Act diarchy was introduced. So this is very important point. Let us discuss the more features of this act. It introduces first time bicameralism like upper house Council of State and Lower House Legislative Assembly. First time it also introduced the direct election in the country. And it also introduced out of 6 members of Viceroy Executive Council, 3 should be Indian. This was a major change. It extended the principle of communal representation. It means separate electorate to 6 Indian, Christian, Anglo-Indians and Europeans. Earlier it was only for Muslims. Now it was for Sikh, Indian Christian, Anglo-Indians and Europeans. It granted franchise to limited number of people. It means limited number of people were allowed to vote on the basis of property, tax and education. It created a new office of High Commissioner for India in London. Basically, Secretary of States for London, India transferred some of the power and some of the work to the High Commissioner for India. It provided for the establishment of Public Service Commission. Central Public Service Commission was set up in 1926 with the help of this act only, and basically it recruited the civil servants. It separated the provincial budget from the central budget. This was also a very important change. It appointed a statutory commission to inquire into the report on working after the 10 years of this act. So basically it says that this act was introduced in 1990 and how this act function for 10 years. For that a commission will be appointed. It was mentioned in this act. Let us discuss the Simon Commission. We have just discussed Government of India Act 1919 says that a commission will be appointed to check how the India function with the help of this act. For that Simon Commission was appointed in November 1927. All the 7 members of this commission was British. For that all the Indian parties boycotted the commission and Sir John Simon was the chairman of this commission. This commission submitted its report in 1930. You must have heard the slogan, "Go back Simon, Simon wapas jao," and the famous case of Lala Lajpat Rai happened when he was boycotting this commission and he was raising the slogan. So this is very important. This commission recommended many things like abolition of diarchy. It also recommended the establishment of the Federation of the British India and the princely states and continuation of communal electorate. It also proposes many changes in the structure of the government. For that British government organized 3 roundtable conferences in London in England and many Indians participated. It invited all the Indian parties and princely states to be in that conference. After the discussion, a white paper on constitution reform was formed. It is very important, and on the basis of this white paper, Government of India Act 1935 was prepared. Many recommendations of this commission was incorporated in this act. Let us understand the Government of India Act 1935. This act is very important because many provisions of this act has been directly included in the Indian Constitution. This act provided the establishment of All India Federation consisting of provinces, princely states as unit. It divided the power of centers and provinces and it proposes 3 lists. First was federal list. It was for center and 39 items were included in this list. Second was provincial list. It has 54 lists, and the third was concurrent list. It has 36 items. Now also we have 3 lists, that state list, concurrent list and the federal list, central list. Residual powers were given to Viceroy. So this is very important. It can be asked in the examination in Government of India Act 1935, who has the residuary power and Viceroy has the residuary power. It abolished the diarchy in the provinces and it introduced provincial autonomy because autonomy was given to the provinces. They were responsible for their governance. It introduced the responsible government in the provinces. This is very important. It also introduced bicameralism in 6 out of 11 provinces. In Bengal, Bombay, Madras, Bihar, Assam and United Provinces were made bicameral consisting of Legislative Council and Legislative Assembly. This is very important point. This act extended the principle of communal representation to depressed class, women and laborer. It extended franchise to about 10% of the total population. It means 10% of the population got the voting right. It established the Reserve Bank of India. It also provided establishment for Federal Public Service Commission, Provincial Public Service Commission and Joint Public Service Commission for 2 or more provinces. It also provided the establishment of Federal Court and it was set up in 1937. So these were the important features of the Government of India Act 1935, and many provisions directly have been incorporated in the Indian Constitution. Hope you have enjoyed the video. If you have enjoyed the video, like, share and comment and subscribe to Educare 247. Thank you and happy learning.